I'm Pat Wallace. I lead the Indoors practice in Esri's Professional Services Division. If you've been to this session before, our ArcGIS Indoors intro, you've probably heard me say that I feel like I'm the Indoors product midwife, so that's my other job title right now. I've been working with these guys, these characters over here for the last, 9 months on this product effort, but really for, like Jeff, we've been working together for 3 years now.
I was thinking about this the other day. It's been almost 4 years since we started meeting on
and
this.
then Craig and I have been working on Indoors together for ever since I've been here.
It's the dawn of Indoors, yes.
Yeah, the dawn of Indoors. Thank you for attending today, our session on introduction to our new product, ArcGIS Indoors. If you haven't already, there's a bit.ly link up here that we've created where you can sign up for our iOS beta. I really encourage you to try it out before you leave. So we've set up indoor positioning throughout the complex here. There's probably a few areas where a mischievous AV tech has moved some Wi-Fi access points just to mess with us. But in general, it's working pretty well. So, get the link, sign up. It's a Google Sheet, and we're loading people in as soon as you sign up and have fun with it. Without any further ado,
I'll just add one thing to that. When you get the response, you'll get a couple of different things. You'll get a link to actually get the application, and then you'll get a follow-on link with an invite to an ArcGIS online organization. So you have to make sure and accept the invite to the organization because that's where the data is. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, great point. So why don't you guys talk about your role real quick before we jump right into it?
Sure. I'm Jeff Archer. I'm on this week, I'm on the 3D content team. But I've been working with ArcGIS. It's kind of a formality. I've been working on ArcGIS Indoors full-time for almost, 2 years, roughly. Kind of part-time before that from our sales team. I kind of came into it from the IPS side of things. I was playing around with beacons and Wi-Fi triangulation. So I'll second that notion. Please don't move the Wi-Fi access points. It really messes with the location. But anyway, I started working with Pat and kind of got hooked on this Indoors thing. It's really kind of fun. So been doing it for a while. And now I guess we're going to be an official team. So that's pretty exciting.
Yep.
Cool. So I'm Craig McCabe, and I started with Esri about 8 years ago, worked for the Mapping Center team, now defunct. That turned into the content team, and we did 3D work in Indoors and kind of large-scale city modeling. And now officially Indoors, and a lot of my focus has been on indoor transportation network generation, navigation in the last couple of years. So Pat.
All right. So maybe we'll go to the next slide, just go over the presentation order. So we're going to take a quick look back. I mean, some of you have probably already seen some of the app templates that, we three have tried to put together over the last, 6-7 years. Like the previous incarnations of the campus viewer last year, there were a slew of runtime, Xamarin-based things we were trying to get off the ground. And then we had a prototype. I don't think we talked about it in our look back, but we had a prototype last UC, which really got us to where we are today. So then we'll talk about, adding business value to your customers. Why are we doing this thing? And then getting that capability in the hands of those same customers. We'll go over common use cases and then we'll show stuff, right? So, don't feel free to egg us on in terms of getting to showing stuff. I know you came here to see that. So back to you.
Right on. Well, just quickly as a starting point here, we kind of want to take a look back. I mean, clearly from the introductions you gather, we've been working on this for a while. It's kind of exciting because it's a unique application of GIS technology. Indoor spaces are kind of interesting in that it's a large scale with a ton of information in it. So you've got a little space, geospatially speaking, a building that has stratified information per floor or per level, however you want to describe that. And it's a lot of geospatial information all kind of jammed in there. You've got points that you're interested in, asset information like fire extinguishers or Wi-Fi access points. And you've also got spaces and all the lines and doors and windows and all that other kind of stuff you need to model. And it provides some kind of unique problems that we have to solve, and we've been kind of, all of us plus a bunch of other people on the team, been working on solving those problems. And the fruits of some of that effort has been, we kind of started this, I say we, but it roughly started with the campus editing template. This came out of the Esri Community Maps program. We wanted to give people something, say you're a university, we wanted people to be able to kind of digitize all the outdoor spaces and be able to contribute that to the Community Maps program and get it in the Esri base maps. So we provided a ArcMap template, several editing templates to make it easy to go from no data on a campus to pretty detailed information about ponds and sidewalks and parking places and fountains and all that other kind of stuff. And then a logical extension of that is once you have the outdoor spaces modeled really well, and you have building footprint information especially, is to get the interior information of that building into that same campus map. So the fruits of that effort was, first of all, known as the Esri Campus Viewer. The Campus Viewer itself was a 3D web application. You can see a screenshot of it here. And it also included some tools to be able to originally, start with just CAD drawings and get that into a GIS and, build a 3D representation of the building. And if you had, like what we're looking at here, the Esri campus, a mix of indoor and outdoor space, you could model all that together, and you can see here a route that goes from one spot in one building to another spot in another building. So this was kind of a leap forward in terms of us being able to actually do this in a browser-based application. That was pretty cool. And then last year at the user conference, we added some other components to it. Part of what we put forth as the ArcGIS Indoors Tech Preview was kind of a new and improved version of the Campus Viewer application. And then for the first time, we kind of moved all those data creation and curation tools into ArcGIS Pro. So it was really like a self-contained desktop thing. You could start with CAD files. You could end up with a series of map and globe services and publish those and then consume them in this browser-based application. Also, we came up with some tools to be able to create the network data set much easier. Anybody who's had to hand digitize a network data set, you can imagine it's a nightmare inside of a building. There's a lot of line work that needs to be closed. So we try to come up with some solutions that might make that easier, that we could move the ball along a little farther for that kind of stuff. So that's just an example of some of the problems we've tackled. It seems like sometimes it's 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. I mean, we try to solve an indoor problem. We run into an issue where that particular workflow isn't supported, either in the JavaScript API or somewhere in the desktop or in ArcGIS Online. So we've really kind of pushed the core development teams to get more indoor aware or floor aware with a lot of the data. So we've had some successes, and you'll see the fruits of that a little bit later. Also from a perception point of view, it's really exciting when we present this technology to people who are new to it and to kind of see the light bulb go on. I know in my experience, I talked to someone and let them know that Indoors GIS is a thing and that it's possible. And it's nice to see them kind of like, their eyes get big and you can see the wheels turning and they're like, wow, I could use this for X and Y and Z. So we learn from people in different industries and we try to bring that in and improve the product. And right now, I'll kick it back over to Pat and we'll go through the business value.
All right, thanks, Jeff. All right, so next slide. So let's just get right down to it. As you know, Indoors is a horizontal market. A lot of potential customers. Most people work indoors at some place. Just here in the U.S., I think as of this year, there was 82-ish billion square feet of floor space, projected to be 109 billion in the next 20 years. So it wasn't small now, and it's definitely getting larger. So there's enormous market potential. You can go look at any of the market reports. I mean, you often wonder what to believe in those studies. It's always like some X billion number of dollars, but this is one of those sets of capabilities where it's pretty easy to understand why the technology is useful, not just to you, but how it can be useful to your organization as a whole. And we need to put something out in the market. It seems like every other day something's popping up out of Silicon Valley. We've been looking at this for years, and we feel like we have a pretty good set of capabilities that we can offer to our customers today. Next slide. So narrow focus, right? Just kidding. If I had to pick any of these industries that seemed hotter than the other, or I was going to try and rank order them, just by the way that we're being approached by our customers, new and old, I would say corporate, commercial, followed by national government, then state, local, maybe higher ed is equivalent to that. And I'd include airports, convention centers in the state-local mix. And then, and then hospitals behind that. And this is just a smattering, right? This is not a complete listing. Next slide. All right, so what is it? The part that we can show off the most today is our iOS application effort, our Indoors app. It'll be available in iOS and Android. There's also the web viewer. It's a good way to describe it. It's a reincarnation of our previous 2D and 3D Indoors viewer technology, but totally re-engineered, refactored with new capabilities. Off the top of my head, the things that are totally new, categorical search, we brought into that. The ability to edit, the ability to conduct, POI, point of interest management activities directly in that interface, as well as working with. So now we've matriculated, we've graduated. We are one of the core product teams, right? So we can't blame it on anybody else anymore. Part of it is maintaining those relationships with these other teams, including distributors. So, we're working closely with the operations dashboard team to include some of our key requirements to visualizing indoor maps and operations dashboard, right? Can I just make it work? Can I pass a configuration to ops dashboard of the very thing I'm looking at now, have it assemble and make sense? We're also working with Esri UK and their simple web editing tool suite to kind of instantiate it as a simple floor plan editor creator. Imagine a world where you just upload a picture of the egress map next to the door, and you can start sketching over the top of that and start creating a robust indoor map that's fit to print and use in the applications that we're developing. I think that's pretty cool. The last domino to fall in our roadmap really is the desktop effort, because it needs to know exactly what our apps want. We don't want you and your customers to have to spend days, weeks, or months with post-deployment configuration issues just to have it work. When you publish, the app should have everything they need to just work, right? That includes icons, styling, everything. So the other pieces of the desktop tool, very focused, right? So let me space out though for a second. So very focused. We're not going to create feral indoor maps. They're headed directly to our viewer and our runtime applications. So it's going to ask your map makers all the appropriate questions to get the requisite configuration data that these apps require. So next slide. So this is a little bit of our mantra. So I'm going to spend a second to go over it. It is a complete floor-aware location platform providing maps, data, and location information for indoor spaces. Facility owners, business operations, their teams, and occupants can use its precise mapping capabilities to do a lot of stuff: analyze, optimize, locate, navigate, collaborate, and share indoor information. This last one, think about it, right? The more you think about it, the more excited I get about it. Indoor environment, I'm an architect by training. I got my master's in architecture, and I learned GIS in the military, and from there it just clicked for me. I thought, what a great tool to help those managing the built environment. Indoor environments aren't like the natural environment. They're designed by purpose, by intent, and they're built for occupant needs and nothing else. What does ArcGIS Indoors do? It provides occupants the tools to engage with this environment and optimize their experience. I think that's pretty cool. Next slide. Now we can talk about who some of these people are. Who wants to use this capability? Owner-operators, right? Sometimes they own the business, sometimes the business owner, delegates that to another organization to manage and operate those buildings. Then there's the operations staff, right, on different business teams across the organization. And then there's the, quote, Indoors IT person. This is the map maker that's, keeping these maps fed and the business operation teams happy. And then there's the employee and visitor personas. And if we go to the next slide, I'm going to provide you a different way to think about this. So at the top, you can imagine the owner-operator and the BizOps leads really looking at this set of capabilities as providing them key system of insight capabilities. And then if you look at the middle tier of that stack, they're really thinking about it from the perspective of keeping their system of records up to date, hydrated, maintained, trustable. And in fact, when you think about the indoor maps that are created from what had up to that point been, hundreds, thousands, potentially tens of thousands of project drawings, the assembly of all that information into one indoor map is a new corporate asset that becomes a new type of system of record that can be used again and again across that organization. And that's the thing that they manage. And then from the system of engagement perspective, of course, it's your employees and visitors. In fact, the BizOps leads and the owner at some point, they just want to be a regular employee. They're just trying to get to their next meeting. They're just trying to find the amenity that they need that's closest to them. Next slide. So when you think about it, it's about you, people like you, being able to more efficiently collaborate with colleagues, being able to connect to your schedule, the things that you're doing throughout the day to get you there more efficiently and to stay on task and on time. It's about the things that make you successful throughout the day. Your computer, where your desk sits, the conference rooms that you use throughout the day, they need to work, right? If they don't work, right, it's not working for you and you're not able to be successful. So if you take that together, it provides tools to optimize your indoor environment. And then if you take a look at the next slide and you think about the existing capabilities of the ArcGIS platform as a whole and its ability to share this indoor information across your organization, you can see how this begins to aggregate and leverage to optimize the organization at large, right? So it's not just about you, it's about your team, your department, the whole business operations section, and all the BizOps teams and the organization as a whole. It's not just about your calendar, but it's about all those scheduled work in the organization. How do we schedule it more effectively to knock it out, to maintain business operations at the pace that it needs to be set? And it's no longer just about, kind of like think about it at work. I think about this stuff. I need this stuff to work. But there's other people who don't think about it as stuff. They're actually putting it in buckets. They're managing it. They're resourcing it. They're determining when schedules are set to maintain it and replace it. So you can move that into an asset management paradigm to keep indoor environments across the enterprise more functional and up to date. So if we look at the next slide, we tried to spell wow. I couldn't quite make it happen. So boil it down to this.
Wow.
Yeah, what to say, wow. So it's about your work, it's about your assets, it's about your workplace. All right, so disclaimer, next slide. This is our safe harbor statement on roadmap information. Last July, like I noted, we had a prototype. We called it Companion. I think we had about 60 users at the UC last year. We used Apple indoor positioning technology, and that's how we tested it out. Next. So January 2018, we had limited beta with some early adopters, and that progressed us to now, where we're looking, and there's a typo there. It says Android iOS. It should just say iOS. So we're bringing our web 2D and 3D viewer to alpha by the end of this month. We have the iOS ready, quote, public beta. You can test it now if you have an iPhone. Next, by UC, we should be at so some things have even changed from this slide, at 1.0 for our iOS app, as well as for our web viewer. And then moving to the end of the year, we'll be able to be at 1.0 for Android as well as for the Pro component. And there's some other pieces that we'll be tracking with other teams, like the Suite web editor, as well as what's going on with the operations dashboard as well. All right, next slide. And that brings us back over to Craig.
All right. So I'm going to take us through the process of creating an indoor map. Pretty key if you want to run one of these apps to have the actual map data, points of interest, et cetera. And so first question is, what data do you have? You may have CAD drawings, you could have BIM, blueprints, or maybe somebody drew a map on a cocktail napkin, and that's your source data. Hopefully not. But we can work with any one of these, and it's different levels of effort to get it into the system. But once you do, there's a lot of things you can do with it. And sometimes no data is almost better than bad data. So we did a project with Los Angeles County, and they had these drawings that were probably 50 years old. And they wanted to create a 3D indoor map of one of the large buildings in LA. And so it was my job to create something from almost nothing. And I look back on that and I think, oh, maybe I should have just gone clean slate and just drawn everything by hand. So, but if you have CAD or BIM, you're probably in luck, especially if that data is structured well. So what we're dumping all this content into is the ArcGIS Indoors information model. It's a new schema for indoor mapping. And all these layers are managed and authored in ArcGIS Pro. And the foundational elements or basic elements of that are buildings, building polygons, levels or floors, again polygons, units or spaces, detail lines, which are your walls, doors, columns, et cetera. POIs, this is really the key component of an indoor map. Is, what are you trying to find? Whether it's a person, could be an event schedule, could be a piece of equipment, basically anything under the sun can be a POI. It has a location, you want to find it. And then the transportation network, how do you find it? So in the past, creating a transportation network for a building was a very manual process. You would, digitize center lines down hallways, have feeders into doorways and into rooms. And that can take a long time, and it doesn't scale well. If you have hundreds of buildings, how do you kind of make that an efficient process? And so we've been working on making tools to kind of ease the burden to create those networks, and I'll show that in a second. And then the vector-based map. This is your contextual information. Where am I? What's nearby? This could be a vector-based map that you've made yourself, and you've published and packaged in with a mobile map package as an element of that map. Or it could be an Esri authored vector-based map. And we're going to have tools coming out where you can actually scrape an AOI from our authored vector-based maps and use that in your own application. So that's coming down the line. But vector is, especially at the large scale, is certainly preferred because image tile-based maps get huge when you're at very large scales. So that the tiles get very large and numerous. Yeah. And it just isn't mobile, it isn't usable. So I'll go into sharing a little bit, maybe as I'm kind of going through the Pro project. So let's go over to Pro now. So the first step is bringing your data in, and I'm showing a CAD file here for the convention center, an area we're probably all familiar with now after a couple days. And so what we've created is a Python toolbox to import those CAD files, those georeferenced CAD. And create basically a floor map that is 3D enabled. So it's applying Z information that basically your XY location as well as your floor heights and spacing so that you can create that true 3D transportation network even if you're using a 2D app. So what drives this CAD tool is an Excel spreadsheet. And this is where you add in your layer names for your CAD, and they should be consistent between floors for this to work well. And you're essentially mapping individual layers to the output GIS layer. And so in addition to your layer names, you also have feature metadata for these individual drawings. And this may be the building facility ID or site name, a description of its use. And finally, we have pathways to the actual CAD file on your system, along with some of the kind of Z information. So what's the ordinal vertical order, starting from 0 at the ground level going up. So you can easily use things like the range slider in Pro to switch between floors as you're doing editing or other data management tasks. In the past, you'd have to apply a different definition query to every layer in your indoor map, which is a big pain. So having this kind of integer associated with all your levels is really, really valuable. And also we have our kind of absolute and relative height information here as well that's going to come in and add that Z to your output features. So we brought our CAD in. Next thing we want to do is create our points of interest. And again, this is the real value in your map. These are the things you're looking for. And so obviously, room centroids are your first point of interest that you're going to add to your map. This is your locations that you're going to find and route to. And what we've done in this Pro project is we have, as you see at the top, different tabs for different parts of the data creation or publishing process. Whether it's bringing in the CAD, exporting a mobile map package for use in a mobile app, creating web maps for use in web applications, 2D and 3D, or for kind of creating and editing your network. So on the point of interest, we have different categories. So on the big containers here are safety and security, events, retail and services, places and things. We can also have a people layer, which we do in our Esri campus implementation of this. And that's driven by a table. And so when the application gets the mobile map package, we have all the icons for all of our POIs at different levels as attachments in this table. So if we look at people, we can see there's a set of attachments at different resolutions to show you basically that category that you can click on in your map or your app and locate those people. And so this is extensible. You can add your own level 1, level 2 categories. Level 2 category would be an ATM, for example. And so it has its own icon associated with it, and it's a retail and services level 1 category. So all of these, you can see, are internal in location. But if we wanted to, for example, have a feature service that has all of our places and things, we can change this to an external location and add a URL here in this field. And so that's helpful for basically connecting to external data sources in your map. You can see here search fields as well. So if we want to know which field we want to search in our names database, for example, in this case it's known as, we're going to do a partial search on that field. So that's our POIs.
So one thing on there,
yeah.
Craig, just in terms of the pro project effort that would be complete in January next year, is to wrap UI, UX components around that,
right.
Elicit from the map maker the requisite information, auto-generate the things that can be auto-generated, like dive into the layer properties and rip out layer ID and stuff like that. So
right.
Just to make it an expedited workflow.
Yeah, so obviously, Indoors is working its way to be a first-class citizen in the platform. Right now, we have some workarounds here and there, like these category tables that are just going to be part of the map package in the future. So yeah, short-term solutions to problems we've encountered. So you have your map layers in here from the CAD GIS tool. We've created POIs. Now we want to create our network. So we've created a set of tools here. Let me see, catalog. And these we released at our tech preview last year at UC. It's a two-step process, essentially. First, you create a Lattice network that covers every walkable space in your building. And that looks like this. Zoom in a bit. So you can see it's also called a tetrachus square. It's a square with an X through it, and you tile this around the building. You use the building rotation attribute to align the lattice to the alignment of the building, and your lattice size is determined by the narrowest doorway. So you want to get at least one extension into every kind of open door, and you want to minimize the size of the lattice, essentially, or maximize the size of the lattice, I guess, and minimize the number of features. So once we have that preliminary lattice, we're going to add in all of our POI locations we created in our last step. And these are things we want to get to along this substrate, this lattice substrate that we're going to navigate along. And what we do next is, suspense, we thin the network lattices. So here we're taking in our pathways. These are this lattice, this pink lattice you see, our transitions, and these are just going to be vertical lines for elevators or helical lines for stairs to connect floors to each other, and also to limit kind of how you navigate between floors. So you can prefer to use a stair route or an elevator route or ADA compliant route, different kind of network restrictions you can add to that. Then we add our origin destination point features. These are our POIs. And we have templates, network templates you apply then to the output network data set that you can then deploy. But what that looks like is, we'll turn on the output of that, which is, it looks kind of like a circuit board, but what it's doing is it's traversing from every point to, it's finding the nearest 50 points. And then it moves on to the next point, and then it finds the nearest 50 points and creates routes. And then it dissolves all these together into our final network data set that we deploy either on the web or mobile. And so the real benefit of this is that you don't have to digitize the network, which is a real-time saver. I've done, I don't know, dozens of manual networks before, and the level of effort here is so much less that it was a revelation when we came up with these tools, even the rough first versions. So what it may look a little bit noisy when you look at these kind of thin networks, but you don't actually see that when you're generating routes. What you see is a kind of a clear pathway that traverses these networks to get to your destination. So this is where I'll be going when we're done here, over to Rock's Lounge. And you can actually get directions as well. So directions is kind of an ongoing research project at Esri. There are complications with trying to direct yourself indoors. There's no cardinal direction sense, like where's north? Anybody point to north right now? So yeah, like what is a street sign indoors? There are barriers to easily navigating indoors, and we're trying to figure out solutions to those. One of those is restricting it to just kind of transition by transition directions, right? So I want to know when I'm leaving a building. I want to know when I'm entering a building. I want to know I'm going upstairs or down an elevator. Other than that, it's on the map, right? So beyond that, maybe I want to call out landmarks along that route. How do I kind of curate those landmark points to make sense and not kind of burden me with additional information that I don't really need, calling out every room I'm passing, for example. And so we're working on kind of figuring out what the level of detail is in a route to make it usable and interesting. And so right now we can kind of expand the events here, and this is a very sparse route. It's just telling us we're passing by Pasadena as we're leaving here. But maybe we want to include things that you don't have to know the names of, like ATMs, restrooms, a fountain, and limit it to a few POIs per wing of a building is kind of what our current thinking is. And so each of these POIs has a radius call out along that route, and so you have to really understand what are the distances in the kind of scale of your building to understand how to configure the network data set. And so maybe we can build in some more intelligence that does that for you. So the kind of deeper you scratch, the more kind of interesting problems you find in indoor navigation and network creation. So we're looking for people to work with and try to figure out these problems. And we all have different abilities and skills, and we'd like to get to something that we can really put out there and be proud of, and will help people find where they need to go. So at the end of all this, we have our network, we have our POIs, we have our maps. Then we're going to export to our mobile map package in this case for the mobile app you're using, or some of you are using this week in the beta program. And that's just create mobile map package, GP tool. And this creates a package that includes all of our vector information, our network, our POIs, and we just push that up to our ArcGIS Online account, where the application is going to then request that mobile map package or update that mobile map package when a new one has been uploaded. And so we have some other version information in here that kind of manage updates and make sure the app is in sync with the map. So that's a quick tour through kind of the content creation workflows and our pro approach to that. And I'll pass it back to Jeff. 2, 3.
So I've just got a couple of quick slides here. I've got, starting this section of getting value to those who need it. And what we're going to look at is, taking all the great information that Craig just put together for the convention center. How do we get that published out? How do we consume it and get it in the hands, in some cases literally in the hands of people who need it? So, one of the things that, would be an intermediate step, obviously, would be to publish this information. So he showed you the process of going to a mobile map package. We can also publish that information as map services or scene services to ArcGIS Online or portal. And once those things are out there, I mean, this is not some specific indoor thing. I mean, we're just using the ArcGIS platform. And I think in general, that's one of the things we strive to do on the Indoors team is if it's already in the platform, we make use of it. We try not to reinvent something that's already there. Obviously, if it doesn't work with floor awareness or something like that, we'll try to make it so. But anyway, once it's on ArcGIS Online or portal, there's a lot of advantages to that. One of them is access control, content management. I mean, you can change what someone has access to by their login. You could create an anonymous version of the data or an authenticated version of the data. So looking really quickly at some of the things we support directly, the client apps that we have right now, Pat went through this when we went through the timeline. Obviously, we're targeting native apps on iOS and Android. We will take a look at that in more detail in just a minute. But one of the things that we want to do is to have a unified user experience. And what I mean by that is whether you're using the browser-based application or a native mobile application, the way you find things or route yourself around from point to point on the campus would be the same experience. So we've really done a lot internally to try to use, for example, the same icons. So you'll see the icons in the screenshot here match what you saw in the desktop. So we embed that information in the actual indoor map, the mobile map package, or in the web service. And we get that information out, and you get a similar experience basically. So we get support across. Our goal is to have support across all devices. If you have a browser, you can access the information. If you have iOS or Android device, you can use a native application, and that gives you some advantages we'll look at in just a second. But ultimately, you decide what information to include or what to show the user when they use the application. So, for example, on a university campus, you may have a publicly available version of a mobile app that visitors to the campus can access and find their way around. And then if someone logs into the application as an employee of the physical plant, then they would see additional information. They would be able to see valves and statues that need cleaning and work orders and that kind of thing. They would be able to go and take care of their day-to-day activities just because they logged in with a username and password that has access to that information. So again, this kind of goes back to that access control that you get native to the platform. We could just leverage that in Indoors, and we do. So there's also the idea of data authoring. Certainly we have an application, ArcGIS Collector is focused specifically on this task, but there might be times when you're just viewing something and you say, oh, well, this person no longer is at the company. If you're looking at specifically at office spaces, there's a need, and we have customers that ask for this. I know Pat brings this up all the time. People need to have simple editing capabilities, and what we mean by that is like just update an attribute. Maybe just change, if you do an inspection, you change the date of the inspection, and you change a couple attributes, and on you go. You can also add new POIs. That's one of the things that's in our scope for including into the applications. We want to be able to add basic information. I mean, it's not going to be a really robust editing environment. We just need to capture some information in the field. And one of the things we have in the mobile apps is support for the client sensor data. Using native applications is actually a good segue into the next slide. The mobile apps, we've chosen to build these as native iOS and Android apps mainly because of that sensor access. So we can use the accelerometer. If you're using an indoor positioning signal, we can use the accelerometer to say if I'm walking down a hallway and all of a sudden the IPS location jumps 30 meters to the west and puts me outside the building, that's probably not where I am. So maybe just kind of keep walking down the hallway until you are sure that the blue dot is outside. So we can build that kind of logic into the application. We can also use, this gets really kind of interesting when you talk about some indoor positioning technologies like smart lighting. The smart lighting, some of the solutions actually use the varying wavelengths of light. Each LED bulb will give out a slightly different wavelength. The camera on the device can actually pick that up. we could spend another whole hour talking about IPS. I warned you guys earlier, this is how I came to Indoors. So, we can get as nerdy as you want. I'll spare you guys, though. Support for indoor positioning. Traditionally, this was Wi-Fi triangulation. That's actually what we're using here this week. Pat and some other members of the team came out last weekend and used the Apple Venue survey app to survey all the radios here in the Palm Springs Convention Center and kind of build a radio map that the Apple Venue program uses to give the blue dot that you actually see in the prototype application when you use it. That's just one example. There's a lot of different people that do that. Google also has a solution. Also some other big names. Cisco has a solution for this as well, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it goes on. I joke all the time, you can't throw a rock in Silicon Valley without hitting some startup that's got the newest and greatest indoor positioning technology. A lot of times that's based on beacons. I already mentioned smart lighting. Smart lighting is particularly interesting. Some really innovative technology there that has promise for really accurate indoor location information. But I digress, we'll keep moving forward. And the mobile app will work in a non-connected environment. You notice when we went through the data creation, we created a mobile map package. That's kind of the default that we have set up for our native mobile applications. So the data is right here on the device. If I need to solve a route, I'm solving against a network data set that's on my phone. If I need to, look at the map data, it's vector data with labels and all that kind of stuff, it's right here on the device. So again, technology that's supported in the runtime that we just leverage in our technology. We're also keeping an eye. I mean, we're learning a lot this week about Esri developer technology, and our teams are very talented. I mean, they've come up with some pretty innovative solutions. One example is, being connected to a map service and being able to partially cache or fully cache the information on the device as you're connected to that service. So if you lose the connection, you still have data on the device. Now, this is something we kind of are tracking. We want to keep an eye on that technology. If it proves to be something that solves a problem for us, I mean, we'll roll it in. So the other thing here is that, the mobile app can support a lot of really common workflows. Sometimes we think about this as like owner-operator or a visitor or, an inhabitant in an indoor space. A lot of those things are met by a mobile application. I mean, how many of us have smartphones, right? Most of us. So it's becoming a pretty ubiquitous platform that we can take advantage of. So for everyone else, though, we also have a browser-based application. And this is kind of an improvement. What we're looking at now today with the browser-based application really doesn't share much of anything with the tech preview version of the app or with the campus viewer. We kind of started with a clean slate. We went to the JavaScript API team and we said, hey, we want to kind of build this thing and build it the right way. It was kind of a prototype that kind of kept morphing and growing, and we kept tacking stuff onto it. And one day we're just kind of like, this might not be the best solution. Let's see what these guys have to say. So we've been working with Renee Rubalcava, Julie Powell, others on the JavaScript API team. I got to tip my hat, Matt Driscoll. I used to work with him years ago. He's extremely talented. So we've kind of taken their advice and making sure that we're building something that uses best practices with the JavaScript API. I won't spend too much time on this. I know we're running a little close to the end. But the gist of it is we start with the application base, which means that eventually we want this to be a template in ArcGIS Online. And like Pat mentioned as well, we want to leverage other things too, like the operations dashboard. You can see a screenshot of it here. We kind of went through a prototype and said, hey, let's run this thing through this indoor map through the operations dashboard. See what happens. Well, it worked. And it kind of just showed, Ethan spent about half a day or a day, maybe. And he kind of came up with some really kind of interesting things, like you can actually switch floors in this, which we didn't expect to work, but it does. So we've been working with the ops dashboard team to kind of, get our use cases into their planning. They've been a great team to work with, so there's going to be more coming with that, and the Suite Simple Editor that Pat mentioned as well. So that's kind of the end of the slides. I'm just really quickly going to go through a couple of demonstrations. This is the current, like as of 48 hours ago version of the web app. This is actually pulled straight from our GitHub repo. So this uses the data that Craig put together for the convention center. And you can see here a lot of the same look and feel. Now, if I click on some of these things, I can identify them. They come up in this little side panel. I won't get in too much into the development part of this, but one of the things we want to do is to allow people to create these kind of components in the application. I intentionally don't call them widgets because that term has been taken by another JavaScript thing. But this is going to be components that you can build for the indoor application. This is just one of them where you can identify things, and then you have these action buttons you could route to, you could route from. We're also going to add the ability to share that or make it a favorite. Similar experience than you see on the mobile app, which we'll also look at in a sec. Now, really quickly, I want to show off another couple of things. I'm going to switch over. This convention center isn't all that interesting from an indoor perspective because it's only one story. So I'm going to switch over to Esri. Let me refresh this, get some data in here. Now, another thing problem that we've tackled with this release is, one of those kind of indoor problems. I'm having a demo problem right now. I guess my data services, there it goes. Come on. All right, now I got a map, but I got no tools. Maybe this will do it. There we go. All right, now we're cooking. All right, so the other thing we've worked really hard on is this idea of a compound floor picker. So in the past, you had like one choice. You could show one floor across the campus, right? You pick 1, 2, or 3. That's what you get. But now we've actually made this so it's compound. This is the result of a lot of work with the JavaScript API team and enhancement requests and meetings and furrowing of brows and all that kind of stuff. We came up with this ability to do multiple individual floors of individual buildings. So this may not seem like a big deal, but trust me, this is a big deal. So being able to do individual floors and individual buildings is necessary to support a lot of workflows. Now we got it, yes.
And the JSON that's actually created when you put that together, you can use that same syntax as part of the config to set like a default view
that's
for the
correct
app as well.
Yeah, that's another part of this is we have the idea not just of customization, obviously, for developers, but also configuration. We kind of brushed over this topic, but we want people in Pro to be able to configure what the application is going to do, not just on initial load, but for example, if I go from an anonymous version of the application, if I log in, then I can completely change the components of the application that actually show up. So maybe I can enable editing, or I can turn on different layers, or I can add another whole set of feature services, just simply based on my authentication. And we want to support all of that in the configuration as much as possible. And the idea is that would be wrapped up in a user interface on the desktop. You configure it, you save it, it publishes along with the services. It just magically happens on the client. So another new functionality that we've included is the ability to switch from 2D to 3D. So in the past, the application was only 3D. And let me see if I can hold a microphone and click, and hey, look at that. So we have the 3D support, but also we have the 2D support. So, and in the same application, in the same code base. And there was much rejoicing when this actually started working, so we're very proud of this. And that's about it for the web application. I'm going to switch now. Yeah, over to my phone.
So while he's getting that up, one other thing to mention on the compound floor picker is that you can use that in combination with the categorical search to filter. Not only will you be able to filter your returns by what's in your extent, but you'll also have the choice to filter it by what you've actually selected in that selector. So that those capabilities combined together are pretty powerful.
There we go, that's better. So here we see my blue dots. I'm not having a spasm. This is actually, I'm going to try to localize the blue dot. It likes when you move around, basically. We'll see what happens. I'm probably going to yank the video feed out. Anyway, well, I'm close, right? So I'm in the secret hallway over there, walking down toward the restrooms, apparently. So not the best blue dot location just now, but you can see this is the same data that Craig published as a mobile map package, the exact same data set, only it's been published as a mobile map package. So you can see down here in this dialog all the different search options that I have. I can access the schedule that's on my phone.
We can put it all on your map if you wanted to see your calendar for the day.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I did this morning. I couldn't remember where
I don't
the
think the
session
events
was.
like this one's like something/something/something. So what it's doing is it's really looking at the location
it is, that's
information in your calendar
Yeah, it's this
event,
room.
and it's just throwing that through our search. And if there's a match, right, it's going to show it on the map for you.
Well, what I can also do is I can tap to identify, get the info panel kind of focused on whatever my area of interest is. I can see the attribute information. I can also see the related items. Again, something that may not seem very, exciting, but it's this is pretty cool because, this is using spatial indexing in an indoor space. This is a relationship that's, spatial in nature. We're using this polygon to actually look against all of the scheduled events that are happening this week and bring them all up as a related item. And you can also think about this if it's an office, we could include assets like these projectors or a fire extinguisher.
Or people.
Or people, yeah. So the other thing we can do is, let's say one of the projector bulbs goes out. I can actually, we have 311 functionality built into the application. We just jump out to a survey 123. Again, it's in the platform. We don't want to rebuild it. Let's just use it. And one of the interesting things about this is that when I open this, it pre-populates with the information for the room that I'm in. So when I want to do the 311 functionality, it automatically, it knows what the current state of the app is,
Right.
What the focus point is, takes that attribute information, and automatically loads it in here. So the name is consistent with what I have in my data.
You could see a whole partner ecosystem taking this information, using Workforce, connecting it to some other system of record for work order management, right?
Right. Yeah, and you can imagine, really easily, like having a connector to some, Maximo database or something. And I can also favorite this location. Of course, I can get directions. I think I'm going to pick a different one. Let me focus on that guy. I'll make it a favorite too. And then I'll generate a route. And you can see, this follows that same kind of pattern that Craig was showing. Behind the scenes, it's using that circuit board network data set that we created. That's actually here locally in the map package on my device. So kind of a cool feature. We can switch the route, origin and destination, pretty standard stuff. Cancel that. Now if I go back to the home thing and I go to my favorites, now you see I've just added a couple of favorites, right? So now I've got a favorites list. I could curate that here. I can also see all the events that are happening. Today's Thursday.
And this is really just manipulating that categories concept that we're working with. So Craig in the categories table, he said, well, my level 1 is events, right? My level 2 search is going to be just the day of the week associated with that event. And the days are listed in order only because we listed it in order in the configuration, right? So there's more we want to do in the event search piece, like now, what's happening now, what's happening tomorrow, and what's happening in the next few hours, things like that. But there's things that you can do in the. Sorry to speak over you.
No, that's
we were
fine.
trying to do this. We were trying to do something where we would just write a SQL statement in the data itself to just go, here's now, here's upcoming. But we have to add something in our next iterations where we can update the index that's created to look at the current time as well as that filter that we placed.
Another one of those little cerebral problems we got to overcome. So I think one of the things I wanted to point out here too is as I walk around, there's kind of a near me baked into all of these lists. So you can see a distance on the right-hand side, and if I'm walking around, I can just pull down to refresh that. It automatically calculates how far away is that from my current location. Kind of a neat feature. And finally, if I want to find retail and services, if Craig, after this, he needs to find the Rocks Lounge, this will get him there. So, the authenticated experience. Now, I'm signed in as ArcGIS Indoors, and I have access, I kind of have God access to this organization, so I see a lot of mobile map packages. But normally you would probably try to limit this to, if somebody needs to have access to a couple different parts of a campus, maybe you provide a couple of mobile map packages for them to get their job done. And they can switch back and forth here. Can also sign out, sign in. For those of you that are going to use the application for the rest of the day, possibly tomorrow, this is where you can also give us feedback and see the known limitations that we know of as of today. So this is this little hamburger up in the upper left-hand corner. That's how you access all of that. Now there's also these, we have a floor picker, of course not very interesting because there's only one floor. But one of the things it does is if I long touch on that, I can make it IPS-centric or not IPS-centric. And what that means is it'll, correct me if I say this wrong, I believe what it does is it snaps me to the floor that I'm on.
Yeah. If you're keyed into the IPS, you want your floor number to change as you progress through the levels in the building. So if you've established a survey and you want to use it and you want your floor to change automatically, just let it run in the way it wants to run. But if you want to get out of that mode, you just long press to turn it off.
Yeah, and there's also, I can locate, obviously, so there I was focused on the Rocks Lounge. Right. If I want to get back to being centric to my location, I can do that by using the little GPS icon there.
So the app has two primary modes. One is I'm an ego monster and I only care about me and the stuff around me, and the other is maybe surprisingly I care about other things and I pan to something else, and maybe that something else is on another floor. Then it's automatically going to switch you out of that snapback mode. So we're not going to do something dumb and go, well, I'm looking at this, but I'm going to change the floor on you, right? We're going to do common sense things in this app.
Yeah, and also you may notice in that middle icon there, there's the green bars. That is actually the IPS confidence interval. If it's really good, then you get lots of green bars. I'm going to argue with its accuracy at the moment. But again, we've had people bring in nothing scrambles this feed more than bringing in Wi-Fi.
It's really just looking at the information. So this is looking directly at core location, right, on iOS, and you get like the confidence circle. Plus, we look at some other things to make the calculation, because if you start getting weird results, you want some immediate visual feedback so that well, maybe I'm just going to turn off this snapback mode because my IPS is doing weird stuff right now.
Right, and I guess that's all I had. Yeah. I don't think we missed anything. Yeah. So, are there any questions? Yes.
I don't know if this is or not, but say if I was a maintenance worker and I wanted to see wires and conduit or pipes that were above or below me, could I turn on like if I was on level 2, could I turn on level 3's utilities and then see what it's like if I go through the ceiling or the floor?
No, that would be a map authoring issue, right? So in this, good question. We do give the ability to see multiple things in the web viewer, but just because of the screen limitation that you have right now, I only can see so much. What you may want to do in that situation, it's a map authoring issue. So you may have like a reflected ceiling thing that you want to see. So you might introduce something that would otherwise show in another level and have it show up in this current level as a separate layer. So that would be one way to handle something like that.
Other questions? Yeah.
It's kind of a conceptual thing. So, currently office buildings have to submit like floor plans to, their city government for public safety purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see this ever becoming like the replacement for that? So these building layouts could be used for
Yeah. I mean, we've thought about that, talked a lot about that with our product manager, Nitin Bajaj. I mean, there's an idea that, we would, not just me, but others have said, that a concept like community maps indoors would be useful if only it were different than the existing community maps and that developers could access the data for certain uses, right? So, if you wanted to participate in that, you opt into it, and then, as we work out the pricing model for the product, you could imagine a scenario where, okay, well, if I opt into this, is there some discount, right, in terms of the data development piece of it because it's being used for these other purposes, right? You still would imagine in that case, not every venue owner, let's say it's like the Coliseum downtown in LA, they wouldn't want everything because there's some private offices in there that they wouldn't want to expose. And we do accommodate that in our data model. You can restrict it, and there's even a display switch where you can say, never display this. So those you would never push out, but you could almost imagine that in an indoors open data type capability where you just port it out.
Yeah,
right?
And the mobile map package has an area associated with it in the content item, and so you could be walking into an area and have a notification that there's an indoor map for that in the kind of community maps analogy.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Going to the party?
All right, thank you.
Craig's going to the Rocks Lounge.
Thank you.